Hello, everybody. Welcome to What's on Joe Mind's mail call. It's a special holiday mail call. We're going to get into the post-sock. We're going to read an abnormally large number of letters that the viewers, have sent in to us over the last few weeks. With me, of course, the honcho Mark Weber.
Putting the mail in mail call.
From her secret Christmas getaway, Joe Colton is with us.
Hi, everybody.
Joe Colton in witness protection.
Right.
She's not in the glowing house at the end of your street.
And new Christmas shirt.
Is that a shirt or a sweater?
It's a sweater.
All right, awesome.
Twerky Christmas. Oh, wait. That's it.
And I, of course, am your host, Mike Irizarry.
Looks good.
Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it. First letter. Hi, team. What do you all think of the incredible amount of G.I. Joe classified product on the store pegs and shelves right now? Do you all have hope for future Target Joe exclusives being readily available and in stock on store pegs? Also, regarding the current supply shipping crisis issue right now, that's a mouthful. What's your guess how the store shelf pegs will be for the holidays? Appreciate it. I'm a fan of the podcast and recent fan and collector of the classified figures. Listening to podcasts about action figures and collecting is a nice therapy in the aftermath due to my mom's recent passing. Well, sorry to hear that. Thank you. And that is from an unsigned letter. Sorry to hear about the passing of your mom. But thanks so much for tuning into the show. We appreciate being a part of your healing process. And if there's anybody else going through something like that this time of year, please reach out and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Just make a connection. Let them know how you're feeling. It can go a long way towards making you feel better. You know, if you have a situation that's a bit more serious than that, go further and seek some professional help. It's okay to not be okay. So please take care of yourself, especially here in this time of year.
It can hit you in unexpected ways when you get a holiday on top of it. So,
Yep.
Right. So getting back to the question, do we all have hope for future Target Joe exclusives being readily available? And I would say, yeah, I certainly have a lot more hope for it now than I did a year ago at this time, when the whole world was willing to, fight in Thunderdome for a Baroness motorcycle. Certainly feel a lot better about that situation now. And I think that's unanimous, right? We don't have to go around the horn on that one. We all feel about the same on that.
Yeah.
I know I got to.
I mean,
even Joe Colton got to.
Yeah, but they sent them to you, Joe.
She wishes they sent them to her.
I mean, we should, as we slowly crawl out of the pandemic, the supply chain stuff should rubber band back to where it should be. But I don't think anybody predicted it was going to be this long.
Yeah. How do we feel about the holiday season? I personally, in the few times I've been out in the stores, Joe's have been everywhere I've gone to look. So even if it's just a couple, again, just a couple is better than we were seeing last year at this time when it was nothing.
Yeah. I've gone to several Targets and a few Walmarts recently just to shop and stuff. And I've seen some Joes, which gives me joy, but there is nothing else like in the Christmas section, clearly because I need more Christmas stuff, but like stores are empty. Like people are shopping. So it's good to see like they're restocking on the Joes, which means that they've done well, which means there's a good chance we're getting more. And more people are going to get more of the figures that they want to see, some of the ones that we haven't even thought of that we're going to see. So it gives me hope.
Well, some dashing young bunch of news troubadours did let us know of what was coming the first half of next year, which is now kind of pushed into the first 2/3 of next year. And hopefully it keeps going past that with more full waves of new figures.
I do think, though, that the supply chain crisis will eventually even out, but it's not going to be for quite a bit. So we might have delays like we have been having. So
Oh yeah.
there's not enough drivers. There's not enough equipment. People demand the equipment.
And there's just a backlog of stuff that has to get offloaded.
There is a backlog, and there is also not a lot of plastic. So
next letter. Next time you need something to talk about, here's something. 82 to 94 saw a lot of characters and even more figures. 1. What character was most improved by a second, third, etc. version? Snake Eyes version 2 is pretty universally loved, but version 1 wasn't a bad starting place. Question 2. Which character suffered the most because of a subsequent version? Example, I have no use for Grunt version 3, the original angry O-Face. Question 3, are there subsequent versions that should have been a different character? Example, should Duke version 3 been Spearhead version 3? And question 4, what was the best mold reuse between different characters? Original 13, Sky Patrol, etc., etc. I had been thinking about all of this because of Classified, but figure it would be a better vintage discussion. Keep up the good work. Paul Sidaway via email, Salt Lake City, Utah. So let's take those questions down one at a time there. Which character do you guys think was best helped by a second version?
Second or tertiary, or further down?
Or a further down the line. So I mean, if they only have 2, fine. But I'll continue to call them second versions. But if you've got a third, by all means, go for it. I'll start just to give you guys some time to think about it. The easy one is, of course, Hawk, right? Because we got the 82 Hawk, which was kind of a nothing burger, but then in 86 he got the bomber jacket version. I would say Hawk is at the top of the list of characters who got better in a later version. And
this might be unpopular. I think Destro, even though the original is completely iconic. But the second Destro, even though Silver versus Goldhead, I don't care, but I'm glad they changed it to make it different.
Sure.
But one of the most uncomfortable weirdnesses of the whole Joe line that no one talks about, because the character's so iconic, is Destro's gigantic bear chest. Right? That's a bad look. With the big ruby hanging in the middle of it.
We were just coming out of the disco 70s, man. He was with it. He was happening.
I didn't dislike the original Destro. I don't think anybody did. But the second one, where there's a West Whitlock level of riveting on that uniform, so we appreciate that. The cape off to the side, the sword, right? There's a lot to like about version 2 Destro, and I think version 1 Destro is very good. But streaming down the equestrian pants that he was wearing, and I just dig it. I think version 2 is an improvement on version 1, even though version 1 is still beloved. And along those same lines, with a different way actually, in that Hawk was a big improvement because he got away from all the mold resharing and got to be his own guy. I really like and think they should have done more of what Stalker got, where I think it was the second Stalker was the Tundra Stalker.
Yep.
And it was just, here's this guy, but in Arctic gear.
In a new environment, yes.
I think if they had salted, or every year, if they'd have just had the 3, not reuses, but characters moving forward, if it had been essential people for snow that aren't necessarily snow troopers, right? Arctic Scarlet, Arctic Snake Eyes, Arctic Rock and Roll, whatever, or Desert Snake Eyes. Desert, not the same guys every year, but I think you could have got a lot of play out of that.
Sure.
Because I just, as much as I like to suspend disbelief, needing Quick Kick in the Arctic, barefoot with no shirt, always, even as a kid, I'm like, well, how smart is this guy? You recruiting this guy? Or Snake Eyes running around in jet black on the tundra, sneaking up on people like a ninja commando, right? It's not like wearing a neon "Eat at Joe's" sign. Let's.
But there's enough stuff blowing around in the air that it wouldn't matter that much.
I guess, but Anyway, I think they could have done more with that. I really like that one for Stalker, even though the original figure is sensational. I really like that concept of an I don't say maybe not an upgrade, but an alternate version that totally works. It's funny because most figures that were, I would say, unappealing but not fantastic, usually they didn't get a sequel.
Right.
Like, why bother?
I mean, so many of them did. Hey, why don't I just feed you the answer?
Scarlet?
Rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Or rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and roll. Go with rock and roll. Okay, so question number 2 is the reverse. What question got, or what figure got worse in
Scarlet.
subsequent versions?
Yes.
And I guess we'll let Joe
Joe
Colton
goes
have
first.
Scarlet as that answer. Mark Webber, you going to stick with the Viper on that one?
The Viper got awful.
Did it?
Even though
Oh,
he's not awful, but the first one's so good, right?
Right. And really, the second one has a great mold.
Yeah.
And then they cast it in purple
Yeah.
and painted it with orange.
Yeah, as garish as sci-fi was, I dug sci-fi. And it's funny because I usually like things more military realistic. And the second sci-fi is all black and gray with a little bit of gold highlights. Like he's actually a little more sane, but he's not nearly as cool, right? Fluorescent green and silver laser trooper RoboCop looking dude. Like, yeah, he's just enough batshit crazy that I'm in. So it flies in the face of my normal sensibilities, but no, I dare you to find me somebody who likes sci-fi version 2 better than sci-fi version 1.
I know a couple of guys who
Ooh, but I got the winner. It's got to be Leatherneck. Because Leatherneck went from classic military fatigues, marine gunny, to giraffe pants, weekend safari hat guy.
Right.
Like, so bad.
department. My personal pick was Zap.
Oh, yeah.
Not that Zap version 1 is this great figure or anything. He's pretty boring in his light green. But man, that second one with all the missiles and the huge leg guards and he's a mess.
If you recall, and it's now 10 years ago, I lazy bastarded that guy back to freedom by putting green legs on him.
You got him
taking
decent
that
pants,
backpack
yeah.
off.
You
Yeah,
got decent pants.
yeah, and he looks great. But
And his name was Bill.
Bill, yeah,
Nice.
and he was actually on a Spanish guard, which is great.
That's on our Instagram. You can go back and check us out there at
way back
at
when,
What's on Joe Mind on Instagram.
That was so long ago when I did that lazy bastard custom. I just went down to KB Toys and picked up that Sonic Fighter Zap.
2 for $5.
$3.99. KB always charged too much, right? $3.99. I'm like, come on, but
Came with a lot of stuff.
that's true.
So question 3, are there subsequent versions that should have been different characters? And the example was, should Duke version 3 have been Spearhead version 3?
Version 3 Duke is friggin' awful.
Yeah. Really, the
He also
desert
looks
one?
like his head backwards.
Just from the marketing perspective, Duke version 3 is going to outsell Spearhead version 3 by a time and a half, if not double.
Yeah.
So,
Especially since Duke was back to being they had moved him into that top guy spot at that point. You weren't going to say no to Duke. I'm generally okay with the selection of which character was which.
considering where toys went afterwards, right? We really, when we looked at that, we would get plenty of newness every year. Brand new characters, brand new sculpts, almost all or most. And then when they would play the hits a little bit, okay. But later on, I mean, beyond that, in every line, it was like, oh, so we're getting Superman, Batman, and 2 other guys, right? Or we're getting Bumblebee, Optimus, and another Autobot, right?
I think you mean we're getting Superman, Batman, and one other guy.
Well, Scuba Batman, and Jetpack Batman, yeah. So, but it was good back then. Toys have been kind of lost their way since, so it's hard to nitpick that wave selection, I think.
Yeah,
because
I think
we'd all love to have it back.
Question 4 on this one: what's the best mold reuse between different characters? I think he nailed it in the question. I think the original 13 takes that because it was the foundation for everything that came afterwards. Like that was really under the gun type engineering put to maximum effectiveness. You know, it paved the road for everything that came later. Past that, a lot of those mold reuses were just repaints, straight repaints.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm not going to bash Python Patrol or Tiger Force, or because I'm a sucker for a cheap repaint. I won't lie to you, but I'm also not going to bend over backwards praising them either. Like, it's just none of them were that great to usurp the original 13, and that the way they mixed and matched parts and reused pieces and stuff to knock that out of the top spot.
I was always a fan of Sky Patrol. Not when I was a kid because they didn't come to Bend, but later on as a collector, they just didn't. We didn't have a Toys R Us, and with no real advertising, you know, I didn't. As a huge Joe fan, I didn't know they existed, which is a problem. But in back collecting them, that they reused a lot of not just Cobra molds, but Cobra driver molds. They were figures that weren't in heavy rotation in your toy box, or maybe you didn't ever have.
Right.
And so I always liked for the Tiger Force and that kind of stuff when they reused molds, mixed up some parts, changed the colors, obviously. They all came with that big, cool. I mean, if you were collecting them, you must have liked the parachute, so that's cool. But they were individual guys, right? It wasn't Airborne in Sky Patrol. It wasn't, you know, Ripcord in Sky Patrol. That's why I don't like Tiger Force, other than that I think the stripes are kind of a little much. But it's all the same guys. The only Tiger Force guy I have is Sky Striker because he's, I think, the only unique guy.
Yeah, he was.
Right? And when the Brazil pack was way too expensive to back collect, and that was a long time ago, the only one I broke for was Claymore because he's new. If I want Claymore, I have to get him from that pack. I think that's, to me, that was always so much more appealing than Tiger Force Roadblock, right?
I don't know. I would argue.
Viper.
I would argue that it's not necessarily too different than the putting an old character in a new climate. It's not. I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's not more than a half step away from it.
I'll give you that. But if I'm setting up a polar mission for my Joes, so I get the Snowcat and Iceberg and Frostbite and Snow Job and Cold and Snowstorm, and I'm ready to go. If I can add a Snake Eyes and a Roadblock that look like they fit on that mission, that's cool to me, rather than having to collect a whole bunch of Tiger Force guys to defend the zoo or something. So
right. It's more, you know, if you're putting guys in different environments, you're letting the environment shape the play pattern as opposed to creating a subset to shape the play pattern.
Yeah.
So I get why one worked from a marketing perspective and one was not done as often.
Yeah.
Joe Colton, any thoughts there? No? You're on my side on that one?
It's fair. It's fine.
Sure.
I don't mind being a minority.
It happens once in a while.
I've been a minority all my life.
The ginger minority.
That's it.
Okay, next letter. Hey, what's on Joe Mind Team? Quick story. Years ago, I was in my car listening to talk radio. Sorry. The host tried to bring on a caller named Joe. The caller didn't respond, so the host casually said, "Yo, Joe." That's when I enthusiastically yelled out, "Yo, Joe!" and laughed. Can anyone else share a silly little story about G.I. Joe entering into everyday life? And that's from Brad Glynn via email. Knowing is half the battle has worked its way into my casual conversation so much that I can't give you one story because I think I said it 3 times to 3 different people today.
I get it a lot, like, because they know I'm a Joe fan, so they'll be like, you know, knowing is half the battle. I'm like, yes, I do know, actually.
Yeah, I mean that's one that cartoon created that phrase.
Yeah.
You know, and it just dug a deep hole and buried it in the lexicon, and now it's grown into a mighty oak and is sprouting branches. So there's that one all the time. There was one time I was Making the drive from St. Louis to Indianapolis for the holidays, I stopped in Effingham, Illinois at the fabulous Walmart complex and almost got hit in the parking lot by a car with the license plate Zartan. So maybe somebody had heard the show.
And you never saw him coming.
Never saw him coming. No, never saw it coming. Did not have Gatling guns mounted on the front or anything either, so which was kind of disappointing. But I think, if you're going to go that way, go big, right? But didn't work out that way. Mark Weber, what about yourself? This is kind of a weird question for you, as your job was, being the head of the brand, the G.I. Joe brand, for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, like, those stories are probably a lot of those stories.
I think
they don't necessarily count.
Yeah, maybe they'll translate. But the one I actually had to work out because, certain people in the house got tired of it, is when they would leave an ellipsis on a statement where they meant to continue it, right? So it'd be like, hey, Mark, yes? We'll say sweetheart. Yes, sweetheart. I have a PTA meeting on Wednesday, ... And I would take that out. Anytime it was softballed like that to me or thrown up above the rim, I would come down with two hands and say, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
So that's perfect. That fits right in there.
And then I get the look that's like, I married that guy. And so I only did it for a while, and then we moved that one out of the banter.
Yeah, I think you should bring it back just for this year.
Absolutely.
It's some of my favorite humor is when you overuse something and then you leave it dead forever. Because now it's like it is a sniper bullet just waiting for the right opportunity, right? So it's going to be at some point it's going to be, hey, the in-laws are going to come for Christmas, and I'll say, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. And it'll be funny, and it'll be worth it, right? The juice will be worth the squeeze. So it's still in there.
Find your time.
It's still in there.
She'll laugh as she beats you with a shoe.
Right.
Because because it'll be the bad one, because it'll be not only was it unexpected and disrespectful on some level, but it'll also be that she thought it was dead. And it's not. Which means it came back, which means it's still in play down the road. So that's my
lurking in your elephantine brain, never being forgotten.
Sometimes you'll see a really good comic do that, right? He'll find something that's really funny the first time, and then he'll do it one time too many on purpose early in the act, and then he'll use it right for the close, right? So,
it's all about the callback, man. It's all about the callback.
I tried to teach my kids when they were young, when they would come up with something they thought was creative, or that was creative, when they'd use it for the third time within half an hour, I'd say third time's not funny. And they kind of learned that rule of comedy. Third time's not funny unless there's a massive gap between 2 and 3, right? So
third time isn't funny, but the fourth time.
Right. If you if you think of it the third time and don't use it, then the fourth time might be in play. That's my one. So yeah.
I'm not funny at all, so none of this will help me.
Next letter.
Oh my God.
Dear What's on Joe Mind staff, good afternoon, or evening, or whatever. Just took a first look at your video on YouTube regarding Overlord, the 91 Snake Eyes, and Larry Hama's concerns about then upcoming figures, etc., back in '85. Nice to see that Mr. Carson Metaxas was well prepared. So that would have been mail call number 3, and you can go back and watch that in our library. I insist that you do. In regards to questions about the toy line, I do have several. Well, good. 1, how come Joe Colton wasn't placed in command of the 1980s Joe team, as Marvel's G.I. Joe number 152 showed he was a Green Beret and therefore more qualified to lead the team, as was done by Devil's Due when they held the G.I. Joe license? 2, why did Hasbro discontinue making female figures after the 1987 lineup? 3, who thinks up the new specialists of the G.I. Joe and Cobra lineups? There are several characters that could have used in the 1980s, such as, and you can see the listing there. And then question 4, why didn't Hasbro introduce the October Guard into the toy line sooner? Hope you'll consider answering these queries. Thanks. Respectfully, Dino Virgilio G. Monzone III via email. That is a mouthful of a name right there. That is quality.
I'm down with that.
So anyways, question 1, how come Joe Colton wasn't placed in command of the team? Well, how come Joe Colton isn't in command of this team?
I was not born at the time.
Right. I was going to say, Joe was -2.
Because she's not necessarily the most qualified to lead. No, Joe Colton wasn't placed in command of the 1980s Joe team because he was in story doing other things. And you don't just replace an effective and successful leader, as Hawk was, simply because somebody who did the job 20 years ago pops back into the timeline. So I don't understand where the assertion that he was more qualified to lead the team comes from necessarily. So that would be the easy answer for me there, is that he wasn't placed in command because he had other stuff to do, and he, at that point, was not necessarily more qualified to lead the team.
And I never heard Kirk actually say it, but I think they wanted a clean break, right? I think they wanted this to be new.
Yeah. When Kirk was in a part of the team creating it in 1982, yes, the linking it to the G.I. Joe of the 60s was not on the table.
Yeah,
like they wanted it to be something different.
Yeah, and they were right, and they were able to fold Joe Colton the first into it later on, sort of, but
it's okay. You're allowed to have soda beverages.
Yeah,
we're I mean, they're not sponsoring us, God forbid. No. But
hey, I went to the dentist too, so I got a little ginger ale going on up here.
Right? I mean, would it kill somebody to step up and be the official ginger ale of What's on Joe Mind?
I don't see Canada Dry advertised a whole lot, so there's got to be some ad budget somewhere.
Well, until
it's the best ginger ale.
I mean, until they do, this show is proudly Schweppervescent.
Oh, that's fighting words right there. Wow. Wait, no. I'll see that and I'll raise you a Werner's.
Ooh,
that's some
Werner's
flavor right there.
All right,
need to have this Werner's.
All right, Werner's is wonderful. We will have to send you some Werner's.
It's Michigan stuff in it.
Yeah, but it's pretty readily available here in Central Indiana. It is the bomb. It is the gingeriest of the supermarket ginger ales.
Okay.
So much so it arrives sunburnt.
Mm-hmm.
That much ginger.
So, anyways, Mark, you were saying as far as Joe Colton.
Oh, just this, I was pretty sure that they wanted a clean break. Because think about it, at that point, it had been dead for a couple years. It had been Super Joe before that. It had been Adventure Team Joe. I guess that was Joe Colton too, right, on the Adventure Team?
I believe so, yeah.
So, but it wasn't classic military G.I. Joe. And so I think they didn't want to scare anybody internally or externally out with, oh man, they're bringing that back. Right? The idea that this is an all new scale, better, more vehicles because we have smaller pilots. And I just think they didn't want to cross signals there.
Yeah.
And I think they were right.
But even from a storyline standpoint, though, just purely within the fiction, Joe Colton didn't show up until that one issue. That was in the 70s or something. It was Hawk and Shockwave and a couple other guys in the Empire State Building or something. I forget the specifics of it, but
yeah, the cover had him shot from behind in dark, right?
Yeah. It was Marvel's big 25th anniversary month.
Yeah,
and so for that they very cleverly brought Joe Colton into the modern or Real American Hero, shouldn't say modern, but Real American Hero Joe storyline.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of a one shot. He didn't pop up very often.
Mm-hmm.
He certainly, again, he was set up as being part of other projects. So he wouldn't have just, they wouldn't have just made him drop everything and command the Joe team, especially when the Joe team had a perfectly capable and wonderfully successful general running the show. So I don't understand where that question necessarily comes from, but hope we answered it to some degree. Question 2 is, why did Hasbro discontinue making female figures after 1987? And that's a good question, one for the ages. We all know the it's almost urban myth status that female figures don't sell, and maybe on the scale that they're trying to sell them in 1988 and beyond, maybe that's the case. But I would have to say that a lot of marketing data went into choosing what. Whoa!
Thursday, they don't know.
Right, it's not their fault, but it's Weber in the traffic crosshairs as always. But anyways, the selection of characters was, I mean, it was done by the design team and sent forward, so there must have been some kind of marketing data to support that female characters didn't move particularly well off the pegs. And that's as near as I can tell about it. They were not, I mean, obviously they did want to create a story and a mythos around these toys. That's the whole hook of these, of this generation of playthings, right? Is that everything's got a story, and we're all still fans of it on our 30s, 40s, and 50s because that's the story that hooked us, right? So obviously, story was a concern, but it wasn't so much a concern that it trumped marketing data. And that would be the best answer that I could give. Mark, I mean, was it any different for you later on? I mean,
it wasn't later on. One of the funny things was the first JoeCon I went to, the figures we were showing off, I had nothing to do with the planning of, right? Because so much of it happens ahead of time. And we had the whole line out there, and a fan came up and pointed and said, "Was there a reason you didn't do a female character this year?" And it actually surprised Daryl, and he thought there was one. He went, "No, I think there's," and then he looked and looked him down, and there was one. He said, "You know what? That's on me. That's an oversight. We should always have at least one female character." So for Daryl, who was truly running the brand when I was there, he thought it was important, and the year that it didn't happen, he was frustrated that happened on his watch. So that wasn't the feeling when I was there. But Joe was being made at such a low production number that I don't think anybody was paying that much of attention up the food chain at Hasbro to what we were doing. I think it was Kirk Pennington who was at Joe Fest this year. And Carson had a great panel with him. Mm-hmm. And someone asked him that question, and he said they didn't sell. They just didn't sell. And I don't think it's as simple as that, because if they weren't selling at all, they wouldn't have had Scarlet followed up by CoverGirl, followed up by Baroness, by Lady J, by Zorana. Like, that's 5 years of obviously saying, yes, we want a female every year. And I don't know if they produced them less, and so if that meant the sales were disappointing based on a lower production run. But I don't ever remember a female character sitting on the pegs, right? Not the way Cobra Law did, not the way Crystal Ball did. Like, they weren't hard to find.
Right.
But me as a collector, I mean, I wanted all the figures anyway. But never once did I look at a figurine and consider that I might not need that one because she's female. And, maybe I was a little more open-minded as a kid, or more likely, those are all killer characters, right? There's not a miss in that first 5.
No.
So.
First 6. We want to count Jinx.
Oh, yeah, and Jinx. Yeah. So, I forgot about Jinx. But anyway, so I don't know what the rationale behind that statement is, but Kirk Pennington said, yeah, they didn't sell. So maybe he knew that, or maybe that's just what he thought, or maybe that's what he told.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, it's 35 years ago, so it's tough to say what it is, and so whatever hearsay he's picked up in that time since is what the answer is.
I am glad that there were no misses among those 16, right?
Right.
Because if one hadn't sold and had sat, I bet it would have squished it. And instead, they turned enough that we got 6 in a time when almost nobody was making female characters at all in the boys' aisle.
Right.
Because they were only considering Joe a boy's toy back then.
right? I'm thinking, Ninja Turtles had April O'Neil. Superpowers had Wonder Woman, of course, because you can't do a DC line without Wonder Woman. And He-Man had Teela, and yeah. So Joe was
Evelyn.
Well, of course, sure.
Evelyn, Sorceress.
Can't beat Evelyn.
Did Sorceress have a figure?
Mm-hmm.
I think late in the run, yeah.
Or did it come with Grayskull? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember a pegged Sorceress, but I wasn't buying He-Man.
Yeah, I don't think she came with Grayskull back in the day. But I think they snuck her out before they shuttered up the windows and changed gears to Space He-Man. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert there. Space He-Man. Joe Colton, you got any thoughts there?
When I hear that like female figures don't sell, like I cannot roll my eyes back into my head far enough, or just wanna like have lightning coming out of my mouth fast enough.
If they made you a female Red Ninja figure, how many would you buy?
As many as I could.
All right. I guess they did with Jinx. So
yeah, just rub the logo off of Jinx.
Yeah.
You're solid.
The wrist lock vocal in his protests already hasn't even happened.
I remember going to one JoeCon and like I don't know if you were there, Mark. I don't remember, but I was talking to Daryl about like why they haven't done, because guys were talking about this with me at JoeCon, so it's not like guys don't want female character figures, but I was like, why can't we do a 6-pack? Make the concept smaller and make like 3 male and 3 female figures, or do a special one where it's just 6 figures of females, and like you can do the Dreadnought females, you can do like anything basically.
The ladies.
If we'd have done that,
they would not sell. Like customizers would not buy them. Like
I would have gone if I'd have done that, and I think it's a good idea. I would have gone all Cobra with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have gone, here's your female Televiper.
Yeah.
Here's your female Heat Viper. Here's your
eel.
Yeah, here's female eel, and here's 6 of them.
Yeah.
And go. And if you want to, and there will be people who army build it. Who go, I don't need 6. I need 24. Right.
So you wouldn't like have like the box set. What? How many figures were the box sets usually? Like a dozen.
Ooh.
Well, the box set at JoeCon was 13.
JoeCon, yeah.
13. Okay. So make it half that price, and people would buy 2 and 3 of those just at figure build. All of those. Who wants just one, like eel? Who wants one?
Yeah.
Female viper. Like
I think part of the trick with the concepts though, and you know because you guys were there, is that usually it was a team and then 5 troop builders and 1 leader, and that was sort of the recipe they went with to help with the mold reuse and that such. And they were already expensive. Now I don't know truly what the markup was there, but I think Brian was trying very hard to find that sweet spot where they didn't have leftovers, but the sets were important enough that collectors would come for them.
Mm-hmm.
And some were more hit than some were more miss than hit, and some were more hit than others. And we'll get to that here in just a second, I think.
Oh, will we? And then no, question 3 actually got answered back in that previous mail call. Who thinks up the new specialists of the G.I. Joe and Cobra lineups? Well, the Hasbro design team did. And then they would pass images of what that specialist was down the line, and then finally they would get personalities and names at the very last step of the process from Larry writing the comic book, who would then send a file card back up to attach to it. So as far as who thought up New Joes, the Hasbro design team did. And why they didn't come up with certain specialties and did come up with some other ones, who's to say? So that again, that was Carson covered that in that episode. Question 4: why didn't Hasbro introduce the October Guard into the toy line sooner? And that is a great question. I wish I had more than a speculation answer, because I don't. I'm glad they got there eventually, kind of. I'm glad that they put those guys out in pretty good form in the early 2000s, and then the Collectors Club got them in modern versions pretty well later than that, to Joe Colton's great amazement and
I was going to say, why did it take them so long? Because they thought Joe had too much money in that savings account.
Right.
But
that home improvement fund needs to get a little bit lower.
That's why all this behind her was delayed 1 year. But still, right call. And I thought the club took too much heat. There were some they deserved, but I thought they took too much over the years and never got enough credit for that set. Because that set is absolutely cherry.
Right? Yeah, that's the best they did.
Yeah. And it's the best version of all those figures ever made in one set.
Yeah.
Like over the years, regardless of the production number or the year it came out, that October Guard set, I think, especially moving forward, will always be the most valuable of the concept, or eventually will be, because it's
it was so popular that they did a second production run, and it's still the most expensive one to try and get today.
Yeah.
Like, there's more of them out there than any other Joe-Con set. Any other one.
Yeah.
Almost twice as many as some other ones. And it's still the one that everybody wants to get. So, yes. Yeah, that was fantastic. But better late than never. I wish I had a better answer for you.
I think partially it was they were the October Guard when Russia was bad. When they were introduced, right? They were enemy characters, but not evil like Cobra. Well written, like Larry would do. And then Russia went from being this boogeyman, for kids at least, right? The evil empire across the wall. And then the wall came down and nobody knew what to make of Russia now. So they went from being kind of poltergeist to kind of undefined. And neither one of those works on a toy peg.
Yeah, it's a difficult story to tell in a toy aisle. It's something you can do on television. It's definitely something you can do in a comic book. But for a kid with 5 minutes to choose a figure, that's a much tougher road to hoe.
Yeah, if you've got White Hat Duke and Black Hat Destro and Colonel Brekhoff in the middle, who needs some explaining, I know what two. If I have $9, I know what two are coming home with me.
Right.
Comrade.
Yeah, your 7-year-old self is not standing there going, "Okay, Lucy, explain."
Nope.
No, not happening.
Joss the peg warmer, comrade. Spasiba. Tovanish. What else did Colossus say? I learned most of my foreign language from the X-Men.
That's probably for the best.
Ungwablich.
So, anyways, Dino, I hope we got your questions answered to a satisfactory degree. We'll certainly keep that fourth one. We'll keep our ear to the ground if we ever hear something a little bit different. We will do our best to get some folks with better information around to answer anything we can get about the October Guard, because I'm kind of interested to know about that myself. Next letter. Sorry to bother you, but I can't find information about this anywhere online.
Oh.
Am I going crazy? Yes. Or do the real American Hero Joes have one hand that's more closed for a tighter grip and one hand that's more open? I was just posing my fast draw and had a hell of a time getting him to hold both of his triggers for his rockets. Thanks for the response. And that's there, right? 333 at Instagram or via Instagram, direct message. And if only there was a place we could go to see a lot of the same figure. Why?
Zap.
Right. Zap. Grunt.
I saw a guy had a live auction earlier today on Facebook, and he was selling an original Zap, and he had no thumb, and then the other hand, in a cruel joke, had only the thumb. All four fingers. I'm like, he should have said he's got one good hand. Right.
That's awful.
I could just see the guy, because you didn't break them simultaneously, right?
No.
I'm going to assume this is a collector and not kid. You're really careful with that bazooka. Pop.
Oh!
All right, fine. Oh!
Yeah, when I was a kid, that happened with my Zap, and then I got a swivel arm Zap, and even then I was so antsy because I didn't want. Cause, again, Zap was fine, but he wasn't like a favorite or anything. I didn't really want to buy him a third time, so Zap almost exclusively became a guy who sat in the whirlwind or
Yep.
the side the sidecar, the Silver Mirage, or the passenger seat of the APC. Zap was co-pilot duty.
Yep. I think I broke my straight arm, and then swivel arm Zap shot the flak.
Right.
But very carefully, right? Because the flak handles get fat quick.
Yeah. You just kind of get the hands in there in the ballpark, and that's good enough.
What are you doing, Zap?
Typing.
Yeah.
But anyways, if only if only we had somebody who had a whole lot of the same figure.
Like 26?
Like 27 Beachheads or something. But in my travels, as I have acquired many Beachheads in the last couple of years, there was one particular day where I got 3 at once. And those 3 Beachheads all hold their gun differently. It's the same figure. It's molded exactly the same at the same time. And they all hold their gun differently. Here is number 7, as you can see there, in his right hand with the stock tucked under the arm, as most of us posed our Joes with machine guns. Then we have number 8, left hand with the shoulder stock tucked under the arm. And then we go to number 9, whose hands are so tight that its left hand won't fit in the right hand at all, and shoulder stock on the outside, how nobody holds a machine gun. So that right there is 3 figures that I can vouch for being in my collection exactly the same amount of time, that all hold the same weapon different ways. And it's not something that Hasbro did deliberately. These toys are old at this point, right? And so for however many 30 odd years that these figures existed on the planet Earth before I got them, they were all stored differently, subject to different temperatures, to different humidity conditions, even if they were just kept in storage versus being out on the shelf. So there's any number of different variables in how these figures have been kept over that time. And every time these figures get warmer or get colder, those hands are going to shrink or swell. And every time they make that change, it's a little different on the way back. So it's more of an ongoing process, which if you play it out over a third of a century, means that these parts are now slightly different from one another than they were before. So you're not going to necessarily find anything official on this. This is just science, and that's how it affects these figures over time. So don't worry too much about it. I think the general rule with anything from Real American Hero at this point is treat it carefully because it's getting old. I don't think we're necessarily at the white glove part of the story where you just can't even touch them with your actual fingers. I think they're sturdy enough for that, but I think we do have to be careful with them and start paying attention to how the hands are going to hold these weapons. And again, I'm pretty careful about that with Beachheads, because if I'm going to go through the trouble of hunting down ones that have that pesky waist piece intact, I certainly don't want to go busting thumbs on those, because that would be ironic and dumb, and ironically dumb. So, Joe Colton, have you experienced this with any of your Red Ninjas?
Nope.
No?
They're controlled and
in a Red Ninja humidor just off camera.
Yep. In a red bin when they're not out.
Is that how thieves can identify it when breaking into your house?
They cannot identify it.
Who's breaking into that house with 4,000 light bulbs on in that room?
Right? For real.
Come on.
Casting shadows all over the place. They turn around, there'd be a throat punch right there.
What are you doing in my home?
Mark Weber, do you have any thoughts on that? Anything to add?
I don't have enough of any one figure to do any credible research, but I liked it when you laid out the research and the findings and said it's science. And I thought, well, now a third of the people won't believe it. But
Oh, wonderful.
I'm a thumb size denier. But
the thumbs are the same size. It's the hands.
right? It's because Bill Gates put microchips in some of the thumbs. They're a little.
That's outstanding.
That's it.
But yeah, that's the long and short of it. So don't say that Beach Party 86 never gave anything to you.
Right? That's research. Wait, does that make them tax deductible now?
Yes.
Well played. Joe,
There we
Red
go.
Ninjas, tax deductible research for the show.
So yeah, so we'll call that our working hypothesis, because far from scientific. But I don't, because obviously I would have no data as to where these figures came from before. And even then I went back and I looked, because I keep track of who I buy them from, because I got a problem. They were all bought from retailers. So it wasn't like I was buying from somebody else's collection directly. These were, folks who go to Joe shows on the regular and sell these things there. So they could have come from anywhere. They could have, I don't know where they were before I had them. I can only vouch for how they've been stored and the conditions they've been put under the last 2 years. But that's pretty much how it's been since I've had them, and it hasn't changed a whole lot since then. So yeah, certainly not something that they molded differently. All the hands were pretty much the same, just some were right. Wow, I just got my rights and my lefts wrong. Some were right, some were left, but that looked terrible. But they were all open to the same degree, and it just changes over time. Play patterns, temperature, humidity, etc.
You had it right for the viewer.
Yeah, but I don't care about that. But that's what we've got. That's 5 letters to tide you over through the Christmas holiday. You're seeing us on your screen now, but obviously we are scattered to the winds this week. So that's what you get. It's a holiday for us too. Joe Colton, as we speak, you are in parts unknown, up in the frozen north on the tundra.
Yes, the frozen tundra, where the cold is born.
Mark Weber is in exactly the other place, the unfrozen tundra, way out in the wilds, the deserts of Arizona, correct?
Depends on the day, or it might be transition day. First, it's the frozen west of Bend, Oregon, the homeland.
Okay.
And then we'll be spending the second half of the break down in lovely Arizona. Best time to go. It'll be like 80 degrees. You just walk around and feel like nature's giving you a hug.
Absolutely. The one time I've been to Arizona in my life was in December, and it was fantastic.
December to end of January. That's the second season. There's summer, and then there's paradise. And it's the 2 months that convince you to stick around through the next 10.
I'll just get down there for a couple of days, just long enough to dry up my sinuses, and then I'll go back home.
Yeah, solid.
Oh.
How about we wish everybody a happy holiday?
Happy holidays. Stay safe.
Merry Christmas. Happy
will
Hanukkah.
That sort of stuff? Okay.
And
Well,
we'll see you in the new year with another new edition of
What's on Joe Mind?
that was a mess. I can't keep that one. We got to do that one. Got to do that one legit.
I'll write it. We'll do it live.
All right. But that's all we got tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your patronage. If you have a minute, why don't you go down, check out below, like our video, click the subscribe button, follow us on social media, do all the fun things, leave a comment, because that helps get our video into better rotation. We're still trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We can do a lot cooler things with you once we get to 1,000. So we appreciate any help you can give us as far as spreading the word. It's been a a great year. We'll certainly be back next week for end of the year. But thank you for everything you've done for us this year. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a minute and wish everyone a happy holiday season, whether it's a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, or whatever else you may be celebrating. We'll be back with you next week for another edition of the Team Stream. But until then, that's it from What's on Joe Mind. You guys have a great holiday. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night, and Yo Joe. I mean, Wes is the Bud Abbott to Joe's Lou Costello.
Yeah.
And that too is a compliment.